Starting the new year fresh. That's always the goal, isn't it? And taking advantage of the rhythm of the calendar to say, well, this year is going to be different. This year is going to be better. This year, I'm going to leave the past in the past, and I'm going to forge a new and a better future. And that usually involves some sort of a New Year's resolution, doesn't it? Yeah, more or less. More saving, more exercise, more healthy eating, more time with family, more time with God, more doing God things, less overeating, less overdrinking, less overspending, less overindulging. Good resolutions about good things, right? And most of us really want to take advantage of that fresh start to have a better and a healthier and a happier life. But often, to me, it seems that fresh start is more of a start and stop. And the same old patterns come back, sometimes rather quickly. You know, I wonder if part of that's because we seem to make the fresh start all about rules. Do this and this and this. Don't do that and that and that. Now the rules, those do's and those don'ts, they're meant to be guidelines to give our life structure and to provide specific steps that we can actually take and look at and see that we're making progress in doing what we say we want to do. But often, the motivation for keeping rules, well, it tends to be what I'll call guilt-driven. All right, so I do it for a while because I know that I should. It's all those shoulds. But then the burden of all those shoulds starts to get, a little heavy. And so I just put it down. And I really don't feel like picking it up again. Or I do it because, I don't want to get caught. It's kind of like me driving down the freeway. I don't drive the speed limit because I love driving the speed limit. I drive the speed limit when I see police because I don't want to get a ticket. And as soon as I think it's safe to speed up again, I'm speeding up again. See, guilt-driven motivations work. They just don't tend to work for long. And eventually, people either, rebel against the rules, saying, I'm just going to do what I want to do. Or people get tired of feeling bad all the time because they're falling short of their goal again. And so they just stop trying. It happens in church world too, with the same sort of results. Church world's gotten, kind of good at these guilt-driven motivations, using guilt to get you to do good things. Thinking about when I'm driving to work listening to Christian radio during a pledge drive, and they almost make you feel guilty that, why are you listening to this if you're not giving? And we do the same thing in church world with like faith-growing things. We're saying, you want to grow your faith, right? And who wouldn't? So here's what you need to do to get there, and followed by a list of sometimes really elaborate steps so that you give more, serve more, read Bible more, come to in-person church more, at the end of the year, give even more than you already have. And while those are good things that help your faith grow, there usually comes a point when people are over-guilted and kind of rebel or push back, and the shoulds either stop getting done or they get done, but you just don't feel good about doing them. Why is that? Well, I think it's because the motivations messed up. The motivations messed up. So if you really want to start the year fresh, you got to start with a different motivation than guilt. Not guilt, but grace. Let that sink in. Not guilt as the motivation, but grace. I think that's what Paul's getting at, driving at in Romans chapter 12. Listen, Therefore, I urge you, brothers and sisters, in view of God's mercy, to offer your bodies as a living sacrifice, holy and pleasing to God. This is your true and proper worship. Do not conform to the pattern of this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. Then you will be able to test and approve what God's will is, his good, pleasing, and perfect will. And I want to zero in on that phrase, in view of God's mercy. See, in view of God's mercy does not mean, well, I see all that Jesus has done for me, so now I'm going to do all that I can to pay him back. Pay him back's a guilt motivation, not a grace one. And we know where a guilt motivation ends up. See, a grace motivation means I don't have to pay Jesus back. That Jesus gave himself for me freely. That he loves me, no strings attached. That he died on the cross simply because he loves me and loved me before I ever did anything right or took a single step in his direction. Loved me even before he knew anything good that I was going to be doing, or took any steps to grow a stronger faith or live a better life. So a grace motivation says, I don't have to pay Jesus back. Jesus does that all freely. But when I see his love, I want to respond with love. I want to respond with love and good works. And a grace motivation means, in view of God's mercy, when I go to the cross and repent of my sin and my self-centeredness, I give in to God's mercy. And I give my life over to God. And as I give my life over to God, God deals with all that garbage of the past that I want to stay in the past. See, God's a really good garbage collector. He takes all that garbage and he takes it away and it's gone. And God then gives me a wonderful opportunity to start fresh. And that's grace. So by the mercies of God, in that grace, I start to change the way that I think. And changing the way that I think, well, it starts to change the way I behave. So that I do those good things not to earn God's love, but to honor God's love. And to live up to who God in Christ made me to be. Using Paul's phraseology there, I'm being transformed by the renewing of my mind. And when I make that sort of a mind shift, and I, instead of thinking, live for me, I start thinking, I'm going to live for God. And then I start shifting my thinking from me first thinking to we first thinking. And as I do those things, suddenly my relationships with God and my relationships with other people, well, they start to get a whole lot better. And that fresh start actually, well, gets some traction. And it starts to build some forward momentum. So how do I get started in that? How do I get started living from that grace motivation, throwing myself, living by the mercies of God? Well, think relationship more than rules. And pursue the person before you start coming up with the plan. Now don't get me wrong here. The structure and the steps are themselves helpful guidelines, necessary even. I mean, if for example, if I just said, hey, I want to exercise more and didn't put any specific steps or goals in there, how well do you think I'm actually going to move the ball down the field? Not very far, right? So I need those plans. But I don't start with the plan. I'm going to start with the person. So here's my guiding principle for my fresh start in this coming year. Pursue Jesus. Just 2 words. Pursue Jesus. Right? The person before the plan. Pursue Jesus. That's my guiding principle. That's what I'm going to use as the foundation for putting my plans in place. That's what I'm going to use to keep me motivated to follow through. And that's what I'm going to use to start fresh again when I mess up along the way. Instead of pursuing self, my goal's pursuing Jesus. Pursuing Jesus. I want you to think about how that makes a big difference in our lives and in our churches when we make pursuing Jesus the starting point. Because what happens is we start doing Jesus things instead of me things. Doing things like helping others, like serving others, like being generous, like meeting people where they are, like leading with grace rather than judgment, like forgiving wrongs instead of holding grudges, like the church experience being more regular and consistent, whether it's the online experience like this one or whether it's the in-person experience. And that's because, again, the motivation has changed. It's kind of like moving from, I guess I gotta go home and be with my spouse, to I get to be with my spouse. I'm longing to be with myself. I'm excited to be with my spouse. Pursuing Jesus. Pursuing Jesus is the way to go, isn't it? And it's also the place to start coming up with some more specific plans and steps that are going to help you grow in your faith like you want to. So as you're developing your plans, ask yourself, how does pursuing Jesus rather than pursuing self influence how I do Bible this year? How I do Bible with others this year? How I pray this year? Where I serve this year, where and when I give financially this year. Also, as you're pursuing Jesus, ask yourself, well, how does pursuing Jesus influence what I do in my personal life, or what I need to stop doing in my personal life? And as you're pursuing Jesus, ask yourself, how does pursuing Jesus, what influence does pursuing Jesus have on what I do with my family, what I do in my church, what I do with my time, what I do with my finances? If you really want a fresh start that's going to last and build some momentum and gives you the opportunity to keep going and growing, then start there. Not with rules, but with a relationship. Not with the plan, but with the person. Pursue Jesus first. Okay? And then from that guiding principle, pursue Jesus, from that motivation, then write some things down that you're going to do. For me, I just take out my phone and start putting in a note field because my phone's always with me. All right, write down some of those steps and some of those areas that I ask you questions about. What I'm going to do with my family, my church, my time, my finances, stuff like that. And then use those steps or goals that you wrote down to help you evaluate the sort of progress that you're making. And then you know what? If you happen to fall short of your goals, well, just keep pursuing Jesus. Throw yourself again on what Paul called the mercies of God. And you know what? You do that and you're going to get a fresh start again. It's called forgiveness. And that's the way, not only to start fresh, but to keep moving forward. Make your foundation, your goal, your motivation, not pursuing self, but pursuing Jesus. And you know what else? Here's a bonus. Pursuing Jesus, well, it's also the best way for people who don't yet know Jesus to see what Jesus is really like.
It's you we seek, and shine your light for all to see. Oh God, it's you we need. Give us your